What's up, guys? We're in Goa today, and I am just actually about to head out. Right there, I was just spent the morning working on slides for our next 10K Designers live session. And let's head out. Let's see what's up. Let's see what it's like in Goa today. Nice bike, bro.
What do you do for a living?
What's up? This was my bike for yesterday, but today I'm going to be taking the Activa just so I can navigate and also get some shots while we drive.
You know what the worst part is? I don't know where to put this in. I decided, let's go all in. Let's get Puneet Superstar on. And everyone told me like this is a suicide mission again.
Yeah, why? Why though?
I had a strong gut feeling that this might work out. Worst case, I would stop everything, get an advertising job, and justify my very expensive Boston University degree.
Like, it's not a weird thing to be a YouTuber / podcast.
Everyone dances on reels, let's just say that. Whether they hate it or not, whether it's not in their... They're like, oh bro, this is very tasteless. Well, fuck, this is how you make an audience. Well, if you want to make an audience like that. Bro, there's these purists in every industry who insist on certain rules. It's only stupid of you to be a purist and say, Shorts is easy audience, it's easy. Why don't you do it?
UI UX, it's kind of like, I design screens, it's the interface and the experience. But today, now when you have YouTube, you have these platforms already, a video is a product.
Correct.
It has users.
Having friends on and then trying to extract value in terms of either comedy, anecdote storytelling, or like practical information that people will use.
Yeah.
But it was getting hard because you can only milk your friends so much.
Yeah,
right?
true.
But I was advised by people, by the way, hey, you should make a separate shorts channel. You should have podcasts separate, like just aesthetically. Thank God I did not listen to their advice. Otherwise, we would not be having this conversation.
Yeah. What's up, Vinamre?
What's up, bro? Welcome to Goa, Mandarin Beach Edition.
Yeah. Welcome to Dostcast Beach Edition. I think in this video, I want to go through some of the, like, your experience building those cars. Like, I don't think you call yourself a designer. I consider you a designer because you have built something from scratch. You do have the same iteration process. You do think deeply about the people you're designing that product for. But let me just set some context, okay? I think you started your first ever episode on the Shatar channel, late 2020.
Correct.
I remember even back then, I was on Dostcast number 16, right? बहुत पहले की बात है. And then, however, I think a lot of the switch and the Dostcast we see today, the Dostcast that most people know, started on the Dostcast channel, which is a separate one.
Right.
And that, I think, is only earlier this year, right? June.
Correct. Roughly 2021 November is when it officially kicked off. We had the channel before that.
Yeah.
But we didn't do anything substantial on it beyond posting shorts and clips.
Yeah. So tell me the story, bro. Overall, going from 0 to now 6 lakh subs, what clicked and what changed from that first version that you put out, which is, I guess, more of an experiment, to today being like one of the literally fastest growing podcasts?
First of all, Vinamre, thank you so much for getting me on your show.
Yes.
It's been awesome hanging out with you in Goa. And I'm so glad we're doing this on the beach.
Unique episode, bro.
Right, super unique. Just going to use design as a context for this to set some premise ki how this all happened. Essentially, like you mentioned, iteration, right? I've been podcasting since 2018 in different formats. I remember my podcast was first called the Vitruvian Man Podcast. And I had my college friends on it.
This was when you were in Boston.
Yeah, college friends on it, professors on it. Then I came to India and I realized that podcasts were booming, but it was just audio. And I think at that point I realized in order to make sense for India, I would have to do them in Hindi or at least English. And so you were on the Vinamre Kasana show as well, which was rebranded from Vitruvian Man Podcast. As far as Dostcast is concerned, it was my third iteration in terms of like shows and IPs are concerned.
Yeah.
And it was destined to fail. Like at that point, I love my team, but my team, my family, my friends, everyone said, this is a suicide mission. At this point, you should just get a job because your YouTube thing isn't working out.
Yeah.
But, UI UX designers now focus more on practicality than aesthetics. You're a better judge of that, but from what I've heard, I figured instead of trying to create something extravagant out of the world, why don't I just be consistent? Why don't I set my design constraint to be twice a week? Episodic constraint in a way, right? And why don't I maintain a habit around the podcast? And why don't I make this my work? And then why don't I ensure that we get 2 episodes out no matter what? And we fix a time and we set a pattern. With that constraint, it was pretty easy for me to then channelize my, my drive toward guests, getting my team around one central goal is to publish 2 episodes a week. And then everything else was just an alteration, right? By keeping this one thing consistent, I think we were able to like eventually build enough steam that people started noticing those casts.
Yeah. So, how many episodes are you at right now?
I have lost count.
100
Probably
and
like 150, 50, 60.
Okay.
There's about 60 episodes or so on Vinamre Kasana's show as well. Yeah.
Tell me this, dude. At some point, and we were talking about this earlier, there is that flip of you're doing things that you like,
Right.
things that you really want to do. The more you do it, the first couple of episodes, it reaches a point where you start getting that feedback of this is what people want.
Right.
And then you're faced with that decision of, okay, there is a part which is, this is what I like to create, this is the kind of stuff that people want, rather than pandering to totally each side, right?
Right.
If I was on my own side, it's like, yeah, I'm going to do what I like, but it might not just get the same response that it does. You totally pander to people and it stops becoming fun. Right? I think this is a common thing that designers face. What was that like for you? Was there a clear point where that kind of flip
For sure.
happened?
To use another design analogy, if you were asked, let's just say if you were not a designer, and you were asked, bro, what are your references for designing this XYZ app? I'm a Tarantino fan, I'm a Gangs of Wasseypur fan. The fonts and colors that they use are very aesthetic and film purist.
Yeah.
But as far as your user experience is concerned, if I make an app that has Tarantino all over it, it's an acquired taste, right?
Yeah.
So it stands in the way of making an impact, right? I can't let my whims and curiosities dictate every move. And that switch really happened when I started making, number one, money from the podcast and decided that it's going to be my full-time thing. Let's just go here because otherwise my shoes will get wet. And second, once I started seeing that there was actually a need or a hunger for long-form podcasts that were not strict or rigid in terms of them looking like interviews or that were only in English.
Yeah.
So I think those two things really helped me pivot to, let's make this like a commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
I mean, there is still some art to it. Otherwise, it would be horrible and almost impossible to do.
Yeah.
But largely, it's like surfing, right? You're surfing on a wave. You also have to play to the market. If you keep curating relentlessly and you only do what you want to do, at some point, that is called a passion project. It cannot be like something you can build a business out of, right?
Yeah.
And so when I saw that this can be something big, and I can potentially make it my livelihood, I decided to pivot to what the platform wants plus my own curation.
What was your first video that kind of popped off? Like, let's say, first 100K?
Well,
there was
there was Puneet, but
Yeah.
before that, this channel was called Dostcast Clips. And it was at around, I think, 400 or 500 subscribers. And then one of my former editors, Tanishq Bajpai, he used to just post clips and shorts on YouTube randomly. We just wanted to have this as like a secondary channel, right?
Yeah.
Let's just also get into short form content. And then he posted a short. This is when shorts were like only a month old, so really fresh. With this YouTuber, Dan Krishu, who's a friend of mine. And he's just talking about the National Board of India, like making a joke about the committee who's got that name. And I looked at it. After a few days, my team said, hey man, this video's got 1 million views. Now, I hadn't seen 1 million of anything in my life, right? Not dollars, not followers, not subscribers. So that blew my mind. I was like, what the hell is happening? In 2 months, it was at 4.8 million.
Okay.
It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
There is something here. So at that point, I decided, you know what? All of my attempts at this writing teacher gig that I'm doing with Shatir, it's really meaningful work, but it isn't enough. So that, I mean, I can't scale it and, become a full-time teacher, because I also felt like with my other channel, I was kind of leaving a lot of people things on the table, right? When you're just instructing, you kind of kill your expression to be an instructor, right? And so I figured, and that channel wasn't working out either. If you look at views or subscribers as a KPI, it's pretty low. But here on the other channel, I saw merit. So that was the first big jump. The second big jump was doing a few episodes and then deciding, just at the brink of quitting, because I figured this might not work out. Because, it was hard to be consistent, and my format wasn't very clear at some point. I was just having friends on, and then trying to extract value in terms of either comedy, anecdote storytelling, or like practical information that people could use.
Yeah.
But it was getting hard because you can only milk your friends so much, right?
True.
So, after that, I decided, let's go all in. Let's get Puneet Superstar on. And I was very surprised. I figured, and everyone told me like this is a suicide mission again.
Yeah. Why? Why though?
But they were like, you're an intellectual,
Yeah.
you should not be engaging in this. But in my gut feeling, I had a strong gut feeling that this might work out. Worst case, I would stop everything, get an advertising job, and justify my very expensive Boston University degree, right? But then that video blew up. And I reached my first 10K subscribers after that. And I also started pivoting to shorts. Because like it or not, at that point, something inside me, and I was advised by people, by the way, hey, you should make a separate shorts channel. You should have podcasts separate, like just aesthetically. Thank God I did not listen to their advice. Otherwise, we would not be having this conversation.
Yeah.
So when that blew up, that's when I got my team together. I was like, listen, I don't care what it is. We're going to get to 100K in 3 or 4 months. I don't know how it's going to happen. We have to make it happen. And when I was saying that, I myself wasn't confident. I felt tremors that I'm leading people into like a mission that might just fail. But I was like, I was also kind of sick of myself, bro. People always say, you're so young, you have time. But it was my 25th birthday, about 2 months after the Puneet episode had come out. And I didn't want to celebrate. Not that I would like celebrating my own birthday, but it's like when you do like a day of reckoning, like what have you done so far? I looked at my life and all I had was a bunch of incomplete projects. And a bunch of unrealized potential. And a bunch of comments from people saying you have a lot of potential. And I was sick of that.
Yeah, I hate those.
I wanted to realize something in my life, right? And I was like, this is my moment. It's either this or nothing. So I left everything else. I left all these experimental, half-assed projects that I was attempting.
You know what I like about walking? It's just, I think when you're sitting, you're facing each other. Here you're kind of facing each other in between. But you're kind of just in a straight, linear thinking kind of mode. And movement. I think movement does, I don't know how to describe it. It just does feel like it brings up a lot more thoughts.
Right.
Like something I do on the opposite end as well is whenever I'm listening to a long form podcast, I always go for a walk.
Interesting.
And then so the next time I'm walking there, I actually remember, oh bro, like that guy was saying that, and then
you get a cue and a trigger. Actually, I have an interesting theory about like bar stools as well, right? If you go to a bar, any bar, you'll find that there's two kinds of people. People who sit on the bar stools, people who sit on the tables facing each other. I often go to bars alone, right? Just to get a vibe, just to speak to the bartender and enjoy drinks in peace. Like not using too much consensus around drinks so that I can get the best kind of drink for myself. Because not everyone wants like a complex drink.
Yeah.
But I've noticed sitting facing the bartender allows you to chime in and speak with the bartender if you want, to speak with the person next to you, but there is no real pressure to constantly talk. You can kind of swerve in and out of conversation as and when you want.
Yeah.
Which is something you can't do when you're sitting face to face. Like in my podcast also.
True.
Like you have to fill the pauses, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like when I face you, there is little to do except talk. I can look there or look there, but that might just feel like, bro, I'm ignoring you. But when you walk side by side, it's like the movement takes up so much of your time that it's low investment but far more fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel this too, because when I'm in a conversation, like I am okay having a awkward silence. I don't even call it awkward silence, just a silence. But sometimes it makes the other person feel compelled to just kind of add something in. Versus when you're walking, you have a third thing that you're doing, which is just literally looking at the pattern here, looking at people who are coming in. Yeah. But tell me this, dude. With Dostcast now, you mentioned the shorts thing, right? About how shorts blew up. So I think you were quite early to realize that, hey, this new format is doing crazy. At this point, how many shorts do you do? And you said 2 episodes a week, but how many shorts?
7 days in a week, 5 shorts and 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So you basically got an upload from the Dostcast channel every single day. That is, I think, great for algorithms as well. It's a great offering for people who want to constantly have something to see. At some point, we will split things up, maybe have a clips channel, but that's a conversation I keep delaying because I don't like to, dilly-dally and take an unnecessary risk too much.
Yeah.
As far as shorts are concerned, when I first started shorts, I don't know if you've seen the short. You have.
Yeah.
But if you look at the comments, it's just absolute hatred. And the reason is...
it's out of context.
It's mostly out of context. It's extremely polarizing. You have a minute, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's like saying that, hey, you watch the soundbite, now watch the entire thing for context, right? That's kind of the philosophy that I come from. But when I first started doing shorts, again, bro, there's these purists in every industry who insist on certain rules.
Okay.
And who have like a small lobby of, you will not be in our group of YouTubers if you do X, right? And I've been I didn't, before Web Assistant existed, I did not know what growth hacking is, right?
Yeah.
I'd heard the word. But I kind of figured like this is a good growth hack. And if the platform is pushing shorts, it's only stupid of you to be a purist and say, shorts is easy audience, it's easy. Why don't you do it?
Yeah.
It's the gold rush, right? Like we were talking about apps earlier today.
Yeah.
Like when the iPhone 3GS came out, people were in a beeline to make apps. Like you said, then now they make content. Everyone has some innate skills, right? Skills that they're born with. Some of them they develop. Then they have real talents that they, just keep nurturing. And then there is what is available in the market. Let's say I'm a really good fisherman, but for 10 years, there's no like real opportunities for boating, right? So I wait. I while away my time. I do something else. But I keep practicing my skill. The 11th year, the government decides we're going to give a boat to every man, and he who catches the most fish, will get a big reward.
At that point, you're ready to capitalize on it, and you've already put in the reps in a low-stakes environment, so now you can go all in on a high-stakes environment.
Exactly.
Let me take this example, okay? The thing that you said about shorts versus this thing and the gatekeepers. So when the App Store came out, back then there was no title as UI UX designer, right? Today that's a very common thing, but it was web designer.
Right.
You designed websites. And so when UI UX came out, a lot of web designers would make fun of, oh bro, what is this new thing, UI UX? You're telling me you're making smaller screens, which means it's less complex. And at that point, it was believed that smartphones were a light version of computers.
Right.
Today, smartphones can do a lot more with location, camera, sensors, everything. So it's like, hey, you're designing for a smaller screen is lesser important. We've been doing this for a decade. And although web designers had the perfect skill to capitalize on this new platform, which today is a dominant platform, more smartphones than computers, there was this thing where it's like, hey, I don't want to do this new thing because of how it makes me feel, how it makes me look to other web designers.
Correct.
And then it's also the thing of, I'm so comfortable with my medium
Right.
that doing this new thing, I kind of feel like I lose the skill, the advantage that I've built up. So let me just stay here.
Right.
And we know what that happened, right? Web designer now, you don't really hear that term as much. It's UI UX designer, product designer. In fact, I love the term product designer because I feel like that accurately describes where this kind of industry is going. UI UX, it's kind of like, yeah, I design screens, it's the interface and the experience. But today, now when you have YouTube, you have these platforms already, a video is a product.
Correct.
It has users. You are acquiring users by doing certain, let's just say, features or growth hacks. These users are acquired. You are activating them, which is moving them from a 30-second thing to more shorts.
You're solving
to
a
long
problem
form.
also, because if they want entertainment, you give them that. If they want value, you give them that.
Yes.
If they want like a cure from loneliness, you give them that.
And I think what I like about your approach is you're really looking at metrics, right? You're not, see, a purist when it comes to videos where it's like, hey, I need to make the perfect thing, camera, shot here. Like even this, for example, to do this as a review format, it's breaking a lot of rules.
Right.
But what you do is you're kind of focused on the outcome. You're like, hey, views, yes, number one. I don't know how much you track click rate, watch duration.
I track everything.
Retention.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like how do you know a video is a banger? Like before you record it, what's your intuition for that? And after you record it, once it's actually out and people are engaging with it?
It's like if you're a bookie, you kind of know which team's going to win, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of flack that views as a metric gets because it optimizes for what will blow up as opposed to what is meaningful. And meaningful is ambiguous. It could be meaningful to me, but it might not blow up, right? That kind of thing. Look, if you're David Lynch and you're a director, you make your money from directing, right? You can have the most navel-gazy, indulgent podcast series that people will watch because you're David Lynch, right? For everyone else to kind of quote-unquote blow up, which is kind of like the main way you get discovered on YouTube, right? You have to, again, like I said before, optimize for the market. You do it too much and you run the risk of looking like a parrot, right? That just knows what the algorithm wants and just feeds it that, right? And then you kind of let go of the responsibility of the curation. It's that soul part of you that people also watch you for, right? For every like 3 or 4 videos with people who I know people are interested in watching, the 5th one I'll get with someone who I think would be a valuable find. It's the same as like the analogy that I use is, years ago when I was in Boston, I went to a record store and I met the record store owner and I said, I've never bought a record, can you help me out? He said, what bands do you like? I said, I like Led Zeppelin, I like this band, that band. So he gave me a Led Zeppelin record so that I felt good.
Yeah.
He gave me another band that I felt good about. But the next 3 were deliberately chosen, where he made me sample the songs, introduce the sound, and got me bought into that reality, right? So I came home with 2 of the things that I wanted and 3 of the things that he curated for me. That balance is what I roughly go for, right? Now, if I were to simply look at views all the time, you'll find that it's a no-nonsense, no BS rule. Someone who is a YouTuber and has an X amount of subscribers is far more likely to, quote-unquote, I hate to use the term, work or blow up as a podcast guest on YouTube. Yeah. Because it's a native audience, right?
True.
They're already on the platform watching that person. Now they're going to come to your channel and watch you with them, right? So you can play that game, but I believe in a balance. That's it. And over time, I think my plan is to just shift more to becoming platform independent, which is hard. Yeah. But it's good to have hard problems to solve. Like I'd much rather solve this problem than, hey bro, no one's coming to my podcast. With this also, I'm sure with your case as well, with the cohort 10K designers and your personal brand, it's like you keep encountering harder and harder problems, but because you've optimized and solved easier problems, those problems seem like a worthwhile struggle. Like you want to solve those problems.
So tell me this, okay? Maybe this is just a positioning thing. But do you see yourself at this point as a podcast that does shorts or a shorts channel that does podcasts?
I get this a lot.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. I'd say I'm definitely a podcast channel that does shorts as my main viral distribution. The reason I say that is, look man, even if you get God himself on the podcast, you won't get as many conversions or attention to your podcast simply because it's far easier to make a 10-minute YouTube native video with like crazy editing, crazy music, right? And get like a fuck ton of subscribers than it is to get a 1.5 hour video that you know, like that the pace is very slow. And it isn't clear at what point someone will click subscribe, right? So I think shorts are a boon for long-form creators like me who can basically cut a small clip that has the meatiest bit of that conversation and get people intrigued. So I'd still say I'm a podcast channel that uses shorts as distribution for the podcast.
Got it. So while building this, now when you were just talking with your friends, my guess is your target person you are making for is other people who kind of find this interesting. This is kind of my friends, right? But as you know, as you've scaled, what have you understood about the audience that you're like, whoa, I just didn't think of that. I didn't realize that that's what it was like.
There's a real hunger for history on YouTube. There's a real hunger for geopolitics. There's a real hunger for taboo conversations that you wish you had. There's a real hunger for friendship. And I think this is the biggest revelation. Like I had no idea that when I started this podcast that I would, without me choosing to be the voice that some people, at least some people listen to when they feel lonely. And that's like kind of the, you know, the reason people listen to late night RJs when they're driving on a road is because they feel lonely, right? And like the RJ is like, अगर आप आज drive कर रहे हैं दिल्ली में तो हम चलाने वाले हैं लता मंगेशकर का ये गाना, and you feel a little less alone. So I don't know. Like I think the podcast is kind of solving that problem. It's a lot of responsibility. The other thing that I notice is when you just look at my audience is what 20 about like I'd say 85% of it is 18 to 34, of which a majority is 18 to 24, and like a smaller chunk of that is 25 to 34. The rest is all skewed. The rest is all like in the 16s and the 45 plus range, all of that. Not a substantial amount, but still there. Go on. I found that, you know, there's a real hunger because I have a split of 77-22, 77 male, 22 female. There's a real hunger for strong male role models. There's a real hunger for, I think India really idolizes educationists. Like, look at Khan sir, physics wala, Aman Dattarwal, you know, Vikas Divyakirti. There's a real passion for them, the same way you would have it for like a Bollywood star. So, that, and yeah, I think very surprised that there's a huge majority of men who really like political stuff, even young men, that I had no idea about. I always thought to make YouTube podcasts, you would have to get comedians on all the time. But it seems to me people aren't as frivolous in what they want on YouTube as I thought. People are very smart. And they write long paragraphs explaining the things that you said wrong or what the guest could have added. And it shows that there's a real hunger for the kind of free knowledge an expert on, say, foreign policy can bring on a podcast that would otherwise take them months, years, or probably a degree to assimilate.
What's the wildest comment you've ever gotten?
Oh, bro, there's so many.
Think about it, but
super hilarious.
You can tell me a couple.
So, I mean, I can remember the most recent one that I thought was really hilarious. It's like someone wrote, this host is too irritating. And then someone wrote, please don't say that, his mental health may suffer. Which was like, great, bro. Thank you for fighting the good fight for me. अरे रुको तो हवा सुलाए beat you.
I had a moment yesterday when there was a thumbnail that went out. I did not like it.
Right.
I was like, this, I don't think it should be on the channel. And I just had this urge to just like, maybe even delete the video, right? On one extreme.
Right.
But on the other hand, just quickly jump into Figma, make one that looks good, maybe spend 20 minutes doing it. But then I decided against it. I realized that by doing so, it kind of shows a lack of trust in my team, right? There is somebody on the team who worked on it, did iterations. We had to get that video out. Again, this is something where we are now like, hey, there is a Tuesday upload and it needs to go out.
Right.
So even if the thumbnail is not right, let's go with our best option, right? So the question I want to ask you is, when you initially started, you were probably working alone, right? When you're in Boston. Eventually, you're slowly doing more experiments, and these experiments seem to be getting more solid.
Right.
When did you eventually switch and say, I want to get a team? I'm going to actually take on that commitment. Because a lot of creatives love doing the creative work, but they're like, hey, am I ready to take on the commitment of getting another person on board, managing them, managing their productivity?
Right.
I hire another person, now I have 48 hours in a day, and now I feel responsible for that output. So what was that like for you?
Well, I failed completely with a team with Shatir. My team was great. I mean, and now my team is fucking phenomenal. But because of seeing others who clearly had well-defined objectives and clear offerings, with my other channel, I had nothing. It's like, okay, ideate and make a video. And me being the Wes Anderson-like freak that I am, I would reject all the ideas except mine.
Yeah.
Because that's where your creative control comes in. Like, you don't want to be like, yeah, that is when I hadn't learned how to play to the platform. That is when I was purist Maximus.
Yeah.
And so I got like a big team, and then I would just bang my head in frustration. Why do you go? I was like a bad leader at that point because I did not know what to do. And so I would just say, think of something, ideate. It's like when you don't have anything else, when you don't have really a clear product to deliver, everyone is just wasting their time. So I hired too early and I hired lots of people. And that failed. And really no money was coming in. So I was just using my savings and help from my parents at that point.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that I have to have like a consistent offering no matter what, and I need a full-time people, I think the production schedule of Dostcast really cemented the fact that I needed a class 18 that could work full-time and deliver. Because it would take a lot of time for me, still does, to find guests, speak with them and have a conversation and do other expansion stuff, right? So when that happened, I feel like the challenge that the business posed was appropriate for more people than just myself.
Yeah.
If I was editing my videos and making my thumbnails, I haven't been a good editor or a good thumbnail maker, right?
Yeah.
So I clearly was like, this is not my domain. What I would not delegate is the hosting, because that's where I come in, right? Or the research.
Yeah.
I once tried having someone else do a research and it bombed on me. Because there's a way in which you can only find the things that you find interesting in the guests and then tweak them. If you read off like, they've done this, they've done that, you kind of have to just like go on a limb.
And then you go back to being old school TV
Exactly.
show, stuck up type of.
Exactly. Yeah, so I feel like now, as to your thing, dude, I get pissed off on the minutest things when it comes to the offering. Because despite the fact that we're making so much, I always feel like, can we go to the next level? And that usually happens when I am bored. When I am bored, I open my YouTube studio. Then I see 10 things that are wrong, right? It's like a garden, and you're a gardener. You're never satisfied. It's a work in progress. And so I needlessly tinker when enough tinkering is not needed or when this could be done the next day.
Yeah.
That is something I'm still learning myself. But I think over time, what I've slowly begun to realize, you have to think in months and years, not base your entire day around an upload.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, this video blew up, great, this will do well. Like, I don't think it's healthy to watch the trajectory of any one video. I mean, in the long term. Because it kind of like just grounds your day in one thing. And you can't think in like broad strokes. Yeah.
Like, there are creators who treat videos as content, and then there are creators that treat videos as products. Right? You are designing something, you are designing an experience for an end user.
Right.
And one ability I've observed for people like that is their ability to sense when something is high TAM, right? Like, bro, this is low TAM, this is high TAM.
Right.
And for people who don't know, TAM is total addressable market, right? Startup term. But when you see something, you're like, that's gonna bang. So, and you were also telling me about how you do research for topics.
Right.
Tell me more about this, bro. Like,
Okay.
what's your thinking on that?
There's two ways not two ways. I have a very idiosyncratic approach. It depends from a guest to guest. I get on, I'll look at your current projects, roughly speaking. I will look at your social media activity. Then I'll think about some things only you're best fit to answer. Now, there may be like better designers in the world, but I will treat you like you're a design god. I will not say, Abhinav sir, aap hi bahut mahan ho. But in a sense, I'm going to use my curiosity to make sure that, hey, what is something that me as a layman is interested in that Abhinav can answer best, to the best of his ability? Because in helping me, he'll help everyone else, right? Now, so there's some creators I know of who specifically inject certain keywords in the conversation and drive the conversation in a certain way so that the shorts or the clips go viral, and it's like touching on like sensitive buzzwords. Like, how anchors will specifically say something controversial to get a good soundbite? That I think is the worst kind of like podcasting that exists. For me, I will literally, well, first of all, let's just talk about the kind of guests. If it's an author, let's say, the best thing you can do is read their book. Spoken to several authors. Half of them tell me they don't even read my book.
Yeah.
They base it off the blurb in the back. And blurbs don't reveal jack shit, right? So they do the dumbest thing. They ask about what did it take you to write the book? God damn it, that's the most boring thing. Of course, they must have spent a lot of time. It's sacred for them. But can we talk about the substance of the book? Can we talk about the experiences leading up to the book? Can we talk about the future of what happens in the book? And if it's a mythological book or like of history, can we talk about where can you take these stories to in contemporary life and apply them? Not in a navel-gazing, hey, 3 things you can learn from this, whatever historian, right? And I generally think if you try to look smart, like, hey, I also know about this, you actually put your foot in the mouth and commit a disservice to everyone else. Because why would you have a subject matter expert like an author on if you were the one who was going to say everything that was like smart about that, right? You're clearly the student here.
True.
So it's like I treat subject matter experts as adjunct professors that I'm taking classes from. Right? And that's the best way to learn. I don't try to make my own biases. I mean, I'm a human, I'm fallible. But I don't like, hey, mujhe to ye lagta hai, aap batao. So I don't go like that. As far as like people like you who are my friends, like I said, it's a lot easier. Because I know you, right? So camaraderie does a lot of things in where research fails. Right? And it's easy to riff with you because we have a shared chemistry and we've hung out together in the past, all of that. The trickiest thing is when people have handlers, when they've been put on by someone else. Like everyone else, I've also been exposed to that. And when they don't know what the show is about, that is when you kind of have to do everything before the podcast. Like, this is what I do, this. And they're just they're great at what they do, but they're so tightly handled that I have to kind of do everything myself.
You're not speaking to them as a person, you're speaking to them as a persona.
Exactly.
And so there is a certain gap that you cannot cross no matter how much you try. And you feel that frustration while you're doing it.
So the first thing I do when I have handlers is immediately get to the real person or refuse to do it. And if the handlers make too much problems, I decide to not do the podcast. This has happened several times. Because they're like, can you send us the questions? He won't answer this, that. I hate when people are, we all have people who manage things for us, right? That's just the way the world works. It's efficient on their part. But when the handlers start deciding the content of what this, supposedly public figure will say, you can't, then you're just like one of the 10,000 people who want to interview them. I don't want to interview people, I just want to have a conversation with them and see where that takes us.
2 questions, okay?
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up. Which podcast do you watch? That's number 1. And number 2 is who are some guests that you really want to get on that are kind of aspirational for you?
Okay.
So the first one.
I think I still stick to Joe Rogan because I've learned more about podcasting through him than anyone else. Right? The fact I like to see him on camera, that's one of the things. I like him a lot because he will read half a book, but will make enough, but he will have such a great conversation and will draw it in such a way that you really want to listen to the 3 hours. I also like Tim Ferriss. My influences have remained the same. Schultz and everyone else and Friedman, they're all nice, but for some reason, I'm loyal to the guys who I looked up to start podcasting in the first place. And I think Tim Ferriss does a great job because he asks very directed questions that are aimed at an audience without making you feel like the audience is stupid. Like never saying 3 things people can learn from you. That's just like a soundbite, boring. Then people have to summarize their experience in 3 sentences and try to say something profound.
True.
But he asks questions in a way where no matter what you do, you always get value. As far as aspirational guests,
let's manifest that shit, bro. I think you're on here. You're going to say it. And when that eventually happens, people are going to come back to the comments and say manifested. So what can we manifest today? Who can we manifest on Dostcast today?
I'm not trying to sound cocky, but I think I have this little list that I made in 2019 of all the people I wanted to get on my podcast.
Yeah.
3 years hence, I checked off 65% of the list. As just a consequence of just working hard and getting to know people, and then they made me hang out with someone else and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Bro, to be honest, I really wanted to speak to a few people that I already spoke to. So at this point, whatever interest comes on has to be people internationally. Like in India, no disrespect to my countrymen, it's fairly easy now to get access to people who I want to speak to, right? Which is the other challenge, which is also the future of Dostcast, if I would just add 2 more minutes, is that the country has a lot, but in terms of treating the podcast like a business, the country has a lot of interesting things, but podcast audiences only want a few things. So that is where you realize that you run the risk of becoming a Hindu mythology channel or a geopolitics history channel, because largely a lot of people seem to only care about that, which is fine. I'm interested in some of it, but am I interested in it all the time? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, the aspirational guests would now be people abroad, people who I think have never been on an Indian podcast that I would like to get on.
Yeah.
And
What can we expect from Dostcast moving forward? You mentioned a bunch of stuff you want to do, a little bit more on the community side, new experiments. Now that you have a solid recurring thing going, what are the new experiments that you're excited to try?
Well, there's a couple of very technical experiments that I'm kind of scared because they might fail, but that's why they're experiments. Okay, this is super weird and super random, but I'm getting this switcher, this device, that's going to allow us to just make the video file and audio file right there and then. Essentially rendering all our editors ineffective. Sorry, guys. That's going to save us a lot of production time. That might also get us to record podcasts in real time and release them immediately, which will help us to capture kind of a journalistic format. I'm still 50-50 on it because I don't want the production cycle to literally run my life.
Yeah.
Because once you go down that route, you're like, bro, breaking news, time to do a podcast. See, that is kind of tricky. So I'm still thinking about that. As far as the community is concerned, we're going to do a rebranding soon and come out with a podcasting school of some kinds, because I think there's a lot of people who have mics. They have difficulty accessing guests. They are not able to start their podcast and then get going. They quit midway. They have a lot of camera shyness, awkwardness. And I think I've done okay with Dostcast so far to take that teaching role and help people start their own podcasts. But not in a bad, hey bro, how do you start a podcast? It's okay, great, get a mic, start speaking, frame questions.
Yeah.
Not in an outlandish outline way, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
Give the outline and do it yourself. Bro, I know for a fact that it was so hard to motivate myself to keep going.
Yeah.
Because it's such a, it's for a lot of people, it's an uphill battle. Now podcasts are becoming mainstream in India, but when I started, bro, no one cared about them.
Yeah.
So I just want to, this is a founder kind of thing, I just want to give back to the community.
Yeah, of course, bro. I think just having an audience that you have that regular feedback loop with is, as a creative, huge privilege, right? Which I am forever grateful for, even on my channel. But the reason I'm so excited about YouTube as a platform is I seriously do believe that all the apps that we use today, of course, YouTube, Uber, Swiggy, Ola, the reason they were able to get to where they are today is they were able to build on this platform, which was the App Store.
Correct.
The App Store, which was built on this platform, which is your smartphone. today, when YouTube is this established, I kind of feel like YouTube is that new app store for a lot of people who are getting their smartphones today. YouTube comes pre-installed, and they're more likely to want to watch, let me just say, want to engage with video products, right?
Right.
Rather than just purely apps and trying that out. So I definitely am super excited for our YouTube growth. I think it is super, super early. This decade, there's a lot about to happen, right? I also think there is the fact that making content is kind of more acceptable now. Like, it's not a weird thing to be a YouTuber / podcast.
Everyone dances on reels, let's just say that. Whether
Yeah.
they hate it or not, whether it's not in their, they're like, oh bro, this is very tasteless. Well, fuck, this is how you make an audience. Well, if you want to make an audience like that.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right, bro. Dope convo. Let's,
Thank you, bro. Thank you so much.
Let's walk back to our bikes.
Yeah, thank you so much for meeting me in Goa. I'm glad that we met here, not in Bangalore, and we got to spend great time yesterday, having fun, riding bikes, and walking on the beach. And if you're here from Dostcast, subscribe to Abhinav's channel, because listen, man, podcast सुन के तो सिर्फ तुम्हें ज्ञान मिलता है. If you want to make money, you know where it's at. It's in design.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Back in my bag and I gotta brag, I do this shit for real. When we was down and we had nothing, we had to share a meal. We put the shit in overdrive with no steering wheel. Shorty throw that thing back in a pair of heels. Yeah, she be riding on that thing like a Ferris wheel. Yeah, I love them dark skin, brown skin, caramel, you know I